Welcome to How to Share, a podcast that celebrates the art of teaching, learning, giving, and growing. I'm Wynne, and in this episode, co-host Vicki Atkinson and I are with best-selling author Alyson Richman. Alyson gives us the elevator pitch for her latest historical novel, The Missing Pages. She tells us how she was inspired by a story her daughter heard about the real-life figure of Harry Elkins Widener, who died at age 27 on the Titanic. Alyson has the amazing ability to inhabit the time periods she writes about, and they are different for each of her 12 best-selling novels. She tells us about her research process and how her insatiable curiosity helps to drive her storytelling and writing. We talk about the unexpected gifts in writing. In this case, the story her daughter Charlotte brought home from a Harvard campus tour. Alyson reminds us that you have to be open to receive unexpected gifts and the goodness that flows from them. Alyson has done that beautifully in this book, embodying both the mother and son's viewpoint, as well as the rich historical context in her gripping story. It's a ghost story, a mystery, a bibliophile adventure, and love story, all wrapped up in one delicious book. This is a wonderful conversation with an incredible author and a fantastic book. We know you'll love it. Hi, Alyson.
Hi, so nice to see you today.
Vicki and I are so excited to talk with you. Your book, The Missing Pages, just launched yesterday, October 14th, and we loved it.
Oh, thank you so much.
We got to just start there. We loved it. Can you give us the elevator pitch for The Missing Pages?
Sure, absolutely. So the elevator pitch for The Missing Pages is Harry Elkins Widener, a 27-year-old Harvard graduate, Gilded Age book collector, boards the Titanic holding a rare and precious book. When the catastrophe hits the ship, his mother, who is traveling with him, pleads for him to board the lifeboat with her. But instead, he tells his mother he has to go back to his cabin to retrieve a rare and precious book, and he is never seen again, nor the book ever found. After his death, his mother builds the Harry Elkins Widener Memorial Library in his honor. And in her behest, she specifies that every week fresh flowers should be put on his desk in the memorial room to conjure up the sensation that at any moment his spirit can pull down one of the books and sit down and read. And there's a parallel storyline of a modern day Harvard College student who was working in the library and begins to suspect that Harry's ghost is trying to communicate from, the other side and to urge her to find a missing chapter of his story.
So good. We love the book. We love how you bring those two stories together. Can you tell us about how your daughter's summer enrichment program tour of Harvard sparked the idea for this book?
Absolutely. So my daughter was doing a summer enrichment program at Wellesley College, my own alma mater, and they had coordinated different tours around the Boston area, different universities and colleges for the children. So my daughter was not with me when she took the tour of Harvard. But when the tour guide got to the steps of the Harry Elkins Widener Memorial Library, he shared the story behind the library, that this beautiful monument was created by Eleanor Elkins Widener. Her son, who was a Harvard graduate, Harry, was on the Titanic, and supposedly, according to the tour guide, this legend, was that she had room on her lifeboat and begged for him to get on the lifeboat with her. And he told his mother that he had to go back to his cabin to retrieve this rare and precious book. He was never seen again. The book never found. To this day, fresh flowers are still put on his original desk and chairs in the memorial room in the library. When my daughter shared this story with me, she just shared it because she thought it was an incredible story.
Right.
Immediately, as a novelist, I was emotionally drawn to this story because I could see both from the position of the mother begging to her son to get on the lifeboat with him, even though she knew that most probably he had to stay behind because he was, a gentleman and he was 27 years old. He was not a child. But I could also see it from the perspective of the son wanting to give a gift to his mother of hope that he actually might get on the next lifeboat. And he just had to go back to his cabin to get a book. And she'd be okay if she just let the lifeboat be lowered into the cold Atlantic water and be saved herself. And so that sort of way of looking at a story from two different directions was instantly intriguing to me on an emotional level. But then I started to think, well, was there any credibility that there was a book so precious to Harry that he actually did go back to retrieve it? And that set me on this scavenger hunt to find out, what archival material existed of what book that might be. I actually traveled to London to go to the Quaritch bookstore to read the letters of leading up to what book he was purchasing. Even after he died, the letter that Quaritch wrote to Harry's Philadelphia books seller Rosenbaum saying, if a body is washed ashore that has a book in its breast pocket. Harry told me before he left the store that this book was so precious to him, he was never going to take it off his person. So that was, she gifted me this story. And I guess I just couldn't shake it from my mind.
Yeah. See why. Now, did the book that he actually bought, was it The Little Bacon?
Yes, it was. It was.
Okay.
Gosh, so amazing. And your embracing of that wasn't unlike the story of Violet, that you tell about being open to kind of the magic, the mystery, the wonder, and following your instinct. And a lot of that is emotional. So amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So true. So your bio says your books are inspired by art, history, and travel. And, that must partially be time travel because you hit different time periods for your book. And I don't know how you do it because we have the early 1900s in this book, The Missing Pages. We've got the World War II era and the aftermath in The Lost Wife. We've got the late 1970s in The Timekeepers. Um, how do you make that magic? I mean, how does your research help you to write about all those different periods?
I think I am a insatiably curious person. I love learning about things that I don't know about before I start researching a book. So I actively choose subjects where I need to learn more because usually every novel I spend at least a year researching before I actually sit down to write. I like to describe my research process that after I've read as much as I possibly can do, I can go to the places to see the landscape of the countries I'm writing about. In the case of The Missing Pages, it was going to London and walking in the footsteps of Harry before he boarded the Titanic, going to, his ancestral home outside, Philadelphia at Linwood Hall, going to all those places, absorbing the memories of what they visually look like, the energy there, pretending I really am seeing the world through my characters' lenses. Then once I've understood that and processed it and done my due diligence to understand, if I'm writing about World War II, it's about understanding what, Czechoslovakia was like during World War II and what politically was happening in the headlines. All those things I have to understand before I start writing a single sentence. But once I do understand the different pieces, and I'd like to also credit my father, who as an engineer told me to understand something completely. You need to be able to take it apart and understand how to reassemble and have all the pieces together. Once I can do that, that's when I start the writing process. So, but to answer more specifically your question, when I get to the end of writing one of my historical novels, I've answered the questions in my head that were originally making me curious to begin with. And I always feel very satisfied that, even if the book doesn't end up being an incredible bestseller, at least I've learned something and answered those original questions in my head.
Right. One of our favorite interviews with another of our favorite authors, Barbara Nicholas, she said that her husband said, "Why don't you write a book that doesn't require so much research?" She's like, I don't want to
do that. But we hear your father's wisdom in all of that. Wynne has a background in engineering too, and I absolutely do not. But that the urgency that you feel, to absorb as much as you can, that has to be difficult at times to exercise patience, to continue gathering and to not veer off and begin to even like it just sketch out storylines. You really refrain from doing all of that until the research is done, or are you inspired in your head and you hold those things but don't?
So I don't actually do an outline for any of my books. So I'm an intuitive writer, and I like to write organically, the way a painter, fills out a paint, a
Yeah.
canvas, brushstroke upon brushstroke to make the shape and the landscape. I like to do that sentence by sentence. I always know the end of how my book is going to end. And I spend a tremendous amount of time thinking of the way into a story. How am I going to grab into the narrative and make you feel tethered to the characters and emotionally anchored to them, but also learn something without it feeling didactic, like you're reading a history book. So there's a lot of mental assembly of all the building blocks of what I think are going to make a good story before I sit down to write.
Mm-hmm.
The case of the missing pages, I really felt that it was going to be the best way to tell the story and make it as fresh as possible, not just another Titanic story, was to tell the story from the voice of Harry's ghost inside the library his mother built in his honor. Because, I mean, a ghost is the ultimate omniscient narrator, right?
Oh, right.
Back in time
Yeah.
to tell you what happened in the past, but he can also sort of hover around and be very much observant of the present.
Yeah.
And so his voice in the missing pages, I think, is really unique because I like to say he's my most soulful character yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's been able to inhabit his mother's library since its inception. He recognizes the lengths that his mother went to make this for him and to house his books. But now young Violet walks into the library with her own grief and needing direction, and you learn why he's chosen her to uncover his missing chapter.
Right.
But the portal into this story was getting Harry's voice. It would have been a very different story if I had just done the whole thing in third person and just told you about Harry's, life and what happened. But you become, hopefully, more emotionally engaged because you're hearing in his own words. His voice inhabits the pages of the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yes.
one of the lines that I love from your book is any book lover will tell you that to read a book is to open yourself to a new world. Done that so beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just the description of I think the memorial, library and the room within, for anyone, and I've never been to the Widener library, but I think there's just so much poignancy about what his mother did. It's a true story, to honor him, and even, just there's so much to love about just the continuing thread about the flowers and the meaning that they held, and that he might walk back in at any moment, and
I mean,
truer. Yeah. Yeah.
his mother really believed that his spirit somehow lived within the library. And I think that is why this sense of making it feel eternally alive with the flowers was so important to her.
Yeah.
There are records and letters that she wrote to Rosenbach, the family's bookseller, that she had books delivered to their home, for Christmas that he would have wanted, and would sit in his bedroom with those books to be close. I mean, I as a mother, it's hard not to cry thinking about, this.
Yeah.
So it's just so emotional because also I, of course, don't portray her as being completely flawless. Grief can sometimes make us behave in ways that we're not always proud of, but it's all encompassing the loss of a loved one, whether it's your beloved or if it's your child or your spouse. And how do we find a way to channel that grief into something that memorializes the person you loved in the truest, purest, most beautiful way? And I think what she did for Harry with this library is incredible. It's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful walk in. And also just, you mentioned before, like how you visualize the memorial room with his desk and the mantle with this portrait there. When you enter the library, everything is sort of white marble with this, these steps that walk up, and in the center of the steps is the varnished wood, the warmth of this memorial room that contrasts against the white marble on the outside. So it really feels like the
Yeah.
beat art within a body. It is so beautiful and so powerful that you cannot help but think that it is this like eternal flame within this.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and Terry was also kind of cheeky, and some of the reveals about his behavior, because he, in many ways, was waiting for Violet, and she finally arrived. But I loved, there's a mention of him describing himself as sort of a crafty ghost, and thinking about the other students, and a student named Oliver, who was a poor library page. Harry's just lurking and waiting, to make a connection, and dropping a $20 bill, innocently. But there's so much heart in the story about his space and what his mother did for him, and how he exists, for those that can connect. Yeah, yeah, just so
Yeah.
beautiful.
You're right. Harry is cheeky. I love one of his lines is, my grandfather once told me that he heard Mr. Morgan say, a man always has two reasons for doing anything, a
Yeah,
good reason and the real reason.
yeah,
I
yeah. That
love
was
that.
so good. Yeah,
So good.
yeah.
And you have the three cornerstones from real life: Harry Elkins Widener, his demise on the Titanic, and this memorial library. Is it helpful to have those cornerstones when writing a historical novel?
I think when writing a historical novel, which is extremely helpful, are there certain facts that that you want to share with your reader? They become like the materials of building your house. And so I knew right away that the library was going to play a very important role, and how Eleanor decides to do this, and also how Harry inhabits those rooms.
Yeah.
So that I definitely knew. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of research I had to do to understand the Titanic and the scenes of, where he could have met Ada, his
Mm-hmm.
bookseller that he meets when he's in London. But there is as much time as it takes to do the historical research. I'm grateful for those building blocks because they anchor the story. And I know that once you finish any of my novels, you're going to have learned something new that you didn't know before you started.
Oh my goodness.
So true.
Absolutely. And I think, and you're giving life, I think, to Eleanor's story, and as you said, all that she did for her son, where, one could go and do all the factual research that you did, but threading together the story and the meaning of his life and the contributions that he made, not, far beyond just the edifice. There was a line where his mother said the library, his room was a eulogy written not in ink and paper, but in mortar and stone. And I think, what you've written in Missing Pages continues that resonance. They live on. There's a richness there. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Speaking of living on in a different way, you have a book called The Lost Wife that's being adapted for the big screen. How's that process? And does it take much of your time?
Takes years of my time.
Any more of your time?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. So, there's three steps to getting getting a book adaptation to the silver screen. And the first is, the option where someone comes and says they think this would make a great movie and they would like the, ability to see if they can take it to the next level. And then the second level is actually where someone starts financing, putting the script together, attaching talent to it. And then the last and the most difficult place to get to is production, when the camera starts rolling and you have the tens of millions of dollars that are necessary to making a World War II drama like The Lost Wife. So I'm in the middle. There is a beautiful script. There is a beautiful, director attached. We've had actresses come in and come off. So we're in that limbo stage. And I have been told by the people in charge that it is not unusual that it can take so long, that it's just a matter of all the pieces coming together. And that's where it's at it right now. In the meantime, I am so busy writing, my books. In the beginning, I tried to get excited with every new development, but I've decided it's much better to just focus on the writing.
Gosh, like
Right.
riding a wave, right? Yeah, that could be, wow, that's so exciting though.
It's
Oh
very
my
exciting. And to
goodness.
see a script created by a really wonderful screenwriter who um, is able to maintain the essence of the book and to, to make it
Yeah.
really compelling and translate that into a screenplay is really a wonderful process to witness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bet amazing and probably a little puzzling too, because it's like your words, but
Yeah.
Hmm.
And also, to I don't know if you've read The Lost Wife, but it also goes back and forth between modern day and going back into the past. So how you pivot and change direction of going back into the past and into the modern day storyline, it's one thing in
Yeah.
a book, but when
Mhm.
you're doing a movie, you really have to be clever in those transitions so that it's not,
Mm,
Jarring. Yeah. Hmm.
how fascinating.
yeah. So that was very
Wow.
interesting. He did a good job on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it feels it sort of feels uh unfair for me to ask this question because obviously you've got this book, you're doing a book tour, you've got the movie, but what are you working on now
Hmm.
other than all those things?
Yes, you knew right to ask because, of course, I'm always working on something new once,
Right.
I finish a book and it goes into production. So I have been writing now. I finished the research a few months ago, but I just started writing my new novel, which is called The Golden Ribbon. And it's about Edith Wharton's time in Paris during World War One, where she worked
Mm,
with Belgian children refugees that she
mm,
sponsored to come from war-torn Belgium to Paris, and she created these amazing hostels for them to live in, and many of them had lace schools in which to teach them a Belgian tradition so that they'd have a skill once the war ended. And then
mm,
there's a dual timeline with what happened in 2005 with her country estate, the Mount in Lenox, Massachusetts, with them trying to get her, the the existing volumes of her library back on the shelves there,
mhm.
and what happened and how they were able to succeed in doing that.
Wow.
Wow.
Those dual timelines, you are so deft at doing that, in the missing pages. So we look forward
Yeah.
to reading that. Oh my gosh. And missing pages is just, a delight for book lovers, history lovers, people who love Titanic
Mhm.
stories, but this is unlike any other. And then just a little, just a soupçon of paranormal, just a little bit, just,
Yeah.
just for fun. Oh my gosh. And I have to ask you a question.
Mhm.
Was there really an electric camel on the Titanic?
There
This is
was
your research at work.
research, the Turkish
What?
baths, all of those things. They were really, they had, and if you can just imagine the Titanic at that time being billed as the playground for the rich. I
Mm,
mean, the amenities that they had. I mean, the a la
yeah.
carte restaurant, the veranda and the palm court. I mean, there was so. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
take Carnival Cruise and then make it, as possibly could be. It had
Mhm.
everything. So no, everything in there that I write is all true.
Amazing.
Hmm.
Truly. His
Really, really
mother's
amazing.
party planning that she was doing on board, it was if she had the resources, of the world around her, yet,
Mhm.
it was a floating little edifice, right?
And I
Yeah.
love doing the research on the Widener family because they are truly the American dream come true on how they got their wealth. Harry's grandfather was a butcher who
Mhm.
sold mutton to the Union Army, made a fortune to that during the Civil War, took that money and put it into Philadelphia's expanding transportation system with their trolley cars, made a fortune with that, and put it into US Steel. And this self-made man created this huge wealth, and Linwood Hall, which I describe
Yes.
in the book,
Mhm.
which was Harry's ancestral home that he lived with his grandparents and his parents and his aunt and uncle. It was filled with the most priceless art you can imagine. I mean, there was a Rembrandt room, a Raphael room, Titians and Vermeers, and a Tiffany stained glass window in Eleanor's tea room. I mean,
Mhm.
just incredible.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
beautiful that the reader gets to revisit that
Mhm.
location, decades later, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And such an interesting point that Eleanor wanted to fund Harry's library with her own money.
Yes, and
Hmm.
she became so angry when newspapers would insinuate that it was her father-in-law.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Harry's father died as well. So she was a widow and she had lost her son. She still had 2 remaining children at home. But she really wanted the world to know that this was going to be an endeavor from a mother's heart and from her own purse strings.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, and your mother's heart was engaged, right? The story of how the story came to you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was doing an interview yesterday and someone said, there's a synergy of when your daughter gifted you this story. And it's true. My daughter was entering a stage in her, and I'm going to get dweepy, in her life where she was about to embark on a new chapter. She was applying for college. She was going to be going off on her own. And this was the gift that I started writing this book when she did go off to college,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when you're open to the way the world gives you these unexpected gifts and what you do with those gifts, and if you're a creative, channeling them in a way to do something that you find soulfully satisfying and that you're contributing to hopefully make the world just a little better, it's a good thing. So I feel very indebted to my daughter. The book is dedicated to her. She's going to be, I mentioned it, she's at MIT now, but she's coming to the Harvard bookstore for my event next week.
Oh,
it's just
yay.
Full circle. It's just really beautiful.
So good. So much in life is about knowing when and how to receive,
Yeah.
right? I think Harry would approve of that, right? You have to be ready.
I think you have to be ready and open, and also realize that you need to put your own energy behind it too to make it happen. Just like Eleanor,
right? Oh my gosh, there's so many. I love how that you've taken your unexpected gift and given it to us, because the missing pages is really, really good, and a gift for sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you for reading it so carefully in this wonderful discussion that we're having.
Oh my gosh, it was truly our pleasure. And we had so much fun exchanging thoughts about things that we loved and the delight. I think that's, it's a beautiful story. We learned a lot, but there was delight, throughout, which I think readers will just, we're wishing you all the best, because this will be a beloved book. We just know it.
Well, thank you so much. I hope so. I hope it reaches lots of readers.
We do too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alyson.
Thank you.
So much. Wonderful chatting with you. I so appreciate you giving me time to talk about the book.
Oh, our pleasure. All the best.
Okay, you too. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Be lovely.
Thank you for listening. Our music was written for us by the incredible duo of Jack Campora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, see avitiva.com, avitiva.com.